Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Illumineers Quest podcast, where we talk everything Lorcana, not just the to-be-released this week Illumineers Quest multiplayer co-op version. I'm Zach.
I'm Jacob.
And thanks for coming on this journey with us. Okay, it's release week.
It's time.
It is Deep Trouble time.
Ooh, I like it.
Well, so this week we are reflecting on Chapter 3, quick preview of Chapter 4. And yeah, it's release week, and so have a ton to talk about because everything was released yesterday. The rest of the set.
Yeah, we got all the juicy cards. It's all out there
From Chapter 4. We know everything. We have some takes. A lot of them are influenced by opinions that I've seen because I'm still not great at evaluating these this early on. But hey, I have a couple that I like. So yeah, with all that said, it's going to be a quick, fun Chapter 3 recap, talk about set championships, talk about all of the stuff. I mean, I feel like this has been the best season by far. For the podcast, for the game, for the community, for like the meta, like you name it, like it just keeps getting better. So
I completely agree.
Yeah, so with that said, let's go ahead and let's start jumping into some of these main topics here today. As again, I always have to thank everyone, appreciate the support. If you're listening on the audio version, you can follow our YouTube channel, and that's actually important for this episode because we will be doing unboxings of all of the stuff we get for Ch4 on Friday. We're also going to do a live stream playthrough of the Illumineers Quest, most likely Friday as well.
Spoilers included.
And then so we'll have a bunch of YouTube content out this week that's exclusive to that. And then, as always, if you want to email the show, you can do so at lorcanapod@gmail.com. You can follow us on X/Twitter at lorcanapod. And then if you want to support the podcast, especially now that we're getting into Set 4, we have a TCG Player affiliate link that is incredible support for us. So thank you very much for all the support as always, and let's go ahead and jump into it. So questions/comments from listeners. I have a email from a new one, or a new, I guess, listener that hasn't written in before. So Andrew, thank you for the note. And it's a really long one, and I read through it, Andrew, I promise, but he gave a TLDR at the top. And so given the format that we're in, I think it's best to just say that. And so his basic question is, what are some fun casual decks that you are primarily built off of commons, uncommons, and rares? So like, I think we've talked about this, it's been a long time, but the Street Rat style deck.
Yep.
So I think I'm going to take this on like a two-parter. I'm going to like answer the question specifically, but then talk about some of the fun decks because we've had these conversations a little bit recently as well. So from a commons, uncommons, purely Street Rat deck is what locally we call it. I honestly don't know if that's like a common like verbiage for it or not.
That's what's known at least locally.
Yeah, which is commons and uncommons. I think the best one for that is pretty much just evasives we found. There's not a lot of ways to deal with evasives outside or within the common uncommon realm. And so I the last time we did, I think I was doing steel ruby with all of the ruby evasives, and then a couple of the steel removals like fire the cannons, and then I had dragonfire in there too, just to like if you were behind to try to use those as catch up tool. But yeah, I mean, I think if you're purely just trying to go off of fun casual decks where you can get it off of like the packs that you pull and using the commons and uncommons primarily, then yeah.
Emerald's pretty good for that too.
Yeah, I mean, especially last time, I don't think we've done that since the end of Chapter 1. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, Emerald's still really good for it with your Flynn Rider was a big one. I know a lot of people use that.
You have the Ursula 2-cost Deceiver.
I don't think that's it. I don't think
because there's not many songs.
Yeah, I don't think that's as big a deal in that type of format. But yeah, I think Emerald, Ruby, and Steel are probably the three. You could probably throw in some.
Yeah, Cloud Kicker.
Yeah, you could probably throw in some Amber too. But I think most of those aggressive cards are rares or super rares. Like I know Lilo's a rare. I know Piglet's a super rare. Doc I think might be a really good one though. But anyways, yeah, I mean, just kind of pretty aggro. You have to go pretty aggro. You have to go evasive. I wouldn't say you have to go evasive, but evasive definitely has a big upside to it because it's so hard to deal with. Yeah.
Mini Surfer is a big one there.
I think she's uncommon too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then the just casual fun decks in general, I'm pretty sure we've said this on the podcast before, but the Brooms deck. I mean, I think that's got some rares and super rares in there. And
legendaries.
Yeah, and if you're considering Yinsid for a Brooms deck, which I think is pretty key if you're going to actually truly run the purple or amethyst steel brooms deck. Then yeah, you probably need Yensid. But yeah, that's like the fun one that I want to try, assuming I get all of the cards I need for it.
I think I'll try the Madrigals.
I was gonna say then the Madrigals is obviously the other one to really consider. I know your dad did the Seven Dwarfs for a little bit, and it can actually be like if it can catch you off guard, and it can steamroll fast. So I would say any of like the theme decks that work together, they're not going to be the most competitive decks out there, but they're going to have synergies because they were made to have synergies, and so those are always going to be really fun. But yeah, personally, I'm looking for the Broom one.
Brooms I bet will probably be the best one too.
Yeah, I really want to use Wayward Sorcerer from set 1. Like he was one of my favorite cards way back then.
Yeah,
and never got a ton of play with the Brooms. And now there's a strong opportunity for that to happen.
I mean, I think even, is it Playful Sorcerer that works into that deck as well?
Yeah, the new Steel one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you got a new Steel Mickey Playful Sorcerer. You got the Sorcerer from set 1. So there's a lot of Sorcerers, a lot of Brooms, Yensid.
The location.
The location that has Broom synergies as well. So yeah, there's a lot of, I mean, the Broom is fully fleshed out now. I highly doubt it's the most competitive thing of all time, but I bet it will be really fun to play.
And I think it's if you do a 4 of every card, it's 60 cards. Is that?
Yeah, it's 15 cards, 4 of, then you end up at 60. So I don't know if there's 15 Broom / Broom synergy cards, but it's pretty close for sure.
It's definitely close.
Yeah, so appreciate it, Andrew. Thank you for the note, and hope that helps a little bit. Yeah, it's definitely more fun to just take a casual step back and do that. I was thinking earlier today we hadn't done multiplayer in forever either, and we need to do that.
Well, hopefully the Illumineers Quest product will bring a little bit more, because like I think it's gonna be really fun, especially if you do it with four players. Like how each one's gonna have like a role. Like you can have a tank, you can have a bodyguard, you can have a supporter, you can have an attacker.
Yeah, I think you're gonna have to, especially when you get to higher difficulties. But
for sure.
But yeah, so hopefully that goes with that one. So. Next topic, as usual, is Card of the Week. And I'm picking one of the, like, most, I don't know, sought after, I guess isn't necessarily the right way to put it, but just one of the most...
game.
Yeah, I mean, one of the top, most consistent cards that's been around forever, and I'm doing Maui Hero to All. And the reason I'm doing this is because I've, like, really changed my thoughts on Maui as of recent. Not necessarily in a bad way, just, like... kind of a tips or tricks to deal with him if you are going to Atlanta or are coming up. So Maui's obviously the 5-cost Inkable and Ruby, 6 strength, 5 willpower with Rush and Reckless. So, he's always the guy that comes in on turn and takes out your big body, takes out your Hiram, takes out, basically whatever it is. He's one off of all of the locations now that are played, like Queen's Castle with 7 strength. But he's still incredibly annoying to deal with, and you obviously have to be ready for him to come down because... he's a 4 of in every Ruby deck, right? Like
100%.
So yeah, I mean, he's obviously very, very big of a huge threat, but I very much changed my perspective on Maui. Not to say he's not good or his impact isn't still there, but he's not the worst threat that can happen because he can only take out one thing per turn, whereas Scar now is, in my opinion, a much bigger problem to deal with.
Yeah.
So he can only take out one thing per turn. And if he's taking out a bigger body, then you can usually relatively easily trade something off that's not as important back into him, and then he's only getting a one really impactful trade. And so the way that I guess the point I'm trying to make is like, don't be scared for Maui to come down because there are a lot more impactful problems that could happen.
Sure.
Just have a plan for when that happens. I guess my initial thoughts, like chapter 1 and 2. When he would be played, it would be like, all right, well, game's over because he just took out whatever. But now I'm ready for it, and I have a plan of attack once that does happen. Especially with like Sapphire, Ruby decks these days with Scar and Maui and Medusa and all of the tools and all the ramp and everything. He honestly is the least scary like tool they have because he doesn't quest, and they're usually getting behind pretty quickly because they're such of a control deck. And so if he comes down, especially in those sense, then I'm kind of happy about it because he's not getting any lore. He's not going to, create a race. And so you still have the tempo from that sense and like getting to the finish line. So don't be afraid to have him come down. Just have a plan of attack. I've been playing a lot of Steel Song, and so the plan is always have a song that can then be sang to finish him off after he comes in and challenges. And then the second one, I guess, is I don't play Ruby Amethyst or like Amethyst Emerald that uses the location Queen's Castle. But just, again, he can't take it out on turn because he only does 6. And so if you can strategically play a good Queen's Castle and they play a Maui into it, again, I think that's a really good tempo shift for you because they're taking your entire turn to just put damage on the castle and maybe finish it off with somebody else. But they're taking their entire turn to do that. And so, that's in my book these days a good position for you to be in.
I mean, that was a lot of good takes. I like it.
Yeah, again, super scary. Not saying he's bad. I mean, obviously, still he's incredible and he's really annoying. But just be in a position where you know what you're going to do when he does come down.
100%.
Okay, news. What's on our mind? League recap. All of the above. That's what this episode's about. So we're just going to jump into it because that's what's on our mind. Is the closing of the chapter. This is the last episode of season 3 as well. Like we now have 3 seasons of the podcast under our belt.
There we go.
Reflect on that for a second.
That's cool. I mean,
this is also our 60th episode. So 60 episodes.
Are we going to have a special 100th episode?
Yeah, we have to for sure.
Okay.
I mean, that won't be for probably 2 more seasons at least. But yeah, I mean, we will for sure.
It's been an awesome ride so far. Let's keep it going.
We now have a deck of episodes. 60.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? I mean, I don't know what I thought when we started this, but I did not expect to get here. That's for sure. I know we've said that a ton of times too, but it's an incredible ride, and this set, like we said, or this chapter has been growth on so many platforms that it's fun to go through. But yeah, so let's talk game real quick. So game, I mean, most healthy meta, most fun meta, craziest growth of the game with the locations. And what's the most memorable thing from set 3 for you?
For set 3, I mean, it'd have to be the set championships.
Yeah.
I mean, that was it's the most fun I've had playing Lorcana for sure. I would have to say.
Yep.
Set championships would have to be up there as the best memories.
Set championships was crazy. I mean, that's for sure. It completely changed the way that the game is approached in a lot of ways because, we've competed in tournaments before, but they didn't feel like there were really any that much stakes behind it. I mean, it was, there were definitely prizes and, boxes of cards or whatever at the end of the championship, but it was nothing like just the pride that came along with those cards and everything else. And so, yeah, I mean, I agree. Set championships like really made it, official to me in a lot of ways.
For sure. I mean, that was really the birth of like the competitive scene of Lorcana, I would say.
Yeah, it definitely was. There were definitely big tournaments before this, but they were very regional. In different parts of the States. If you live in the U.S. or different parts of Europe, I know France had a couple big tournaments, or has had a couple big tournaments, and a couple other places in Europe. But not everybody can attend that. But this was like blanket across the country, blanket across Europe, having the ability for everybody to compete in these and to have a chance. And so yeah, from that respect, it was the first like real chance for everyone to be able to compete.
I mean, yeah. So I think if you're talking about memories from set 3, it has to be included.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we definitely we're going to talk about that at some point today. So no reason not to start off with it because it was probably the biggest highlight as well for us and for local. Winning one. I mean, we went in not expecting to get anything, hoping for a card, and coming out with a mat and a card is obviously a fantastic, result. And from that respect, I think, my mindset shifted, and I hope yours did too. I know you didn't get one, but I hope it shifted from, man, I hope I can compete and hope I have a chance to, I can do this. And I know I can win, or I know I can get there. I just have to have, the right lines and really understand the meta and get a little bit of luck on my side, and it can happen. So
yeah, I'm in the point now where I'm trying to find the deck I'm most comfortable with, which for the longest time was Ruby Amethyst, but now I'm searching, so I'll get there.
I think Ruby Amethyst will be really good again. Not to throw you in that in a tizzy, but
I think it will be too.
Yeah, so I think that was super fun. I mean, one of the most memorable things for me is, and again, maybe it isn't, maybe in a year we look back and it's not as memorable, but to this point, the meta and the diversity of the game is by far the most fun. And so as we stand today, like that's by far the most memorable because it's made the game the most enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think if you're ranking the set so far, it would be Chapter 2 at the bottom.
For sure. Ruby, Amethyst, mirror match all day long.
Set 1 at second place, and then set 3 in first.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, that's I think from a competitive meta landscape viability of different decks. Yeah, I mean, Chapter 1 had a couple really good ones. I mean, obviously Steel Song and Ruby Amethyst being the top two. I think there were a few other like ramp, the Steel Sapphire ramp was still kind of there with Bell and A Whole New World, but it obviously really found its home in Chapter 3. But yeah, Chapter 3 has Emerald Steel, aggro. You've got Amethyst, Emerald Tempo. You've got Ruby Amethyst, kind of a more mid-rangey deck now. Little bit of control tools still. You've obviously got Ruby Sapphire for the big bad control deck now with Lucky Dime. You've still got your Sapphire Steel for your ramp wheel. Steel Song is still fairly viable. I mean, the amount of meta decks that you can play, like everybody, has the opportunity to find something they're comfortable with.
100%.
Versus to your point, or I guess both of our points. In Chapter 2, everybody was playing Ruby Amethyst, and I was not comfortable on it, and so it was just not as fun because you either play that and you're good at it or you're not.
Yep, exactly.
And so it was not as fun as having the opportunity to play something that more fits your style and more fits your knowledge of the game, I guess.
100% agree.
So locations too. I mean, obviously we can't talk about a Chapter 3 recap without talking about locations.
So I know that I have feelings about locations.
Yeah, we talked about this on the card awards briefly, but now if we want to expand on it, now would be the time because
I just find it awkward playing locations for me.
There is a very very necessary time, or a very strategic time when they play them. You can't just play them out at any point in time and expect to gain an advantage of it because, like we just talked about with Maui, like if it can just get swung in and taken out, then you might lose that tempo. Or if they've got a Maui's fishhook on board, like there's almost no point in playing in location because basically everything can take it out then.
Exactly.
Everybody got really good, really fast at using crabs and foxes to take out locations. And so yeah, I agree. I think locations can be a little clunky, but when played right, it's 100% a game changer.
I agree, and I think to that point, I think Jim Hawkins will make his way back.
Oh, I do too. I think there have been a few impactful locations that are pretty decent, but as more of those come out, and you have more impactful locations that are more synergized into the larger strategy of the deck, then yeah, it'll be paramount, to get those out for free. But yeah, I mean, I think that there are certain decks like Steel or Emerald Steel just don't deal with locations. Like they just really don't have the tools. I mean, everything in Emerald does fairly low amounts of damage. I mean, there is a little bit of steel removal that some people use, like Zeus, to help take out locations. But yeah, so played correctly or played at the right time, where you have a good tempo advantage or a good board advantage, and you can play it. I mean, the passive lore gives we've talked about this a couple times too. The passive lore gives every deck the opportunity to have that passive lore to get across the finish line.
100%.
So yeah, I mean, locations are definitely going to be memorable. It definitely changed the way that the game is thought of, changed the composition of decks. I went from the start of the set with the Jim Hawkins and 8 locations with 4 Queen's Castles and 4 RLS to running McDuck Manor on the Sapphire Steel with 4 McDucks to 2 McDucks, and now I'm been on the Steel Song with no locations, and so it's clear that they're not like overpowering, and you have to include locations. And so again, I think the diversity of that makes it really fun because you can play them if you want. There are options where you don't have to play them if you don't want, but whatever floats your boat, I guess, because in a good way, like not in a bad way at all, because obviously like everybody has the opportunity to play into their style and into their wheelhouse. No,
I think that's the best part about the meta the meta that was set 3, I guess, for sure is.
It's a very weird time. I mean, I guess you say that was set 3. I mean, technically, we still have a couple weeks left. I mean, we have a week left, but then with Atlanta being in 2 weeks, 2 weeks from when this is released, a lot of people are still on the set 3 meta because set 4 meta is not going to be valid in Atlanta, and so it's kind of a weird time.
I believe it's Atlanta and Chicago is where it won't be.
No, Chicago you can play set 4.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Then retract my.
Yeah. So I mean, people. I'm not going to, or we're none. I don't think many people at all locally are going to Chicago. I think there's maybe one or two where it's like everybody is going to Atlanta. But yeah, so it's going to be a very weird dynamic for the next couple weeks as the set 4 stuff comes out. And, I'm still thinking through set 3 decisions for Atlanta because I can't make my final decision on what to bring. But, yeah, nonetheless, like I think that's an exciting decision. I would much rather be in this place on, like, I don't know what to play. I don't know what, the most matchups I'm going to run into are versus, like we talked about with Chapter 2, where it's like, well, I hope, I do a good job and draw well into this Ruby Amethyst mirror because that's what I'm going to run into every time, which I don't have to worry about that. And so I'm incredibly grateful that that's the case.
100%. I mean, it's really like if it was more the same, like with set 3 and set 2, if it was just more the same mirror matches, then I don't think Lorcana would be in a very healthy place right now.
That's a good point. I really think that, and again, I don't want it to speak for everybody. I'd kind of be interested if what people's thoughts on this are, but I don't think I would be near as happy with it. I think I would have gotten, maybe not burned out is the right way, but I definitely would have not been near as amped on like the store championships. Like obviously I still would have tried and still would have wanted it, but I definitely wouldn't have like gone all in like I did over those 2 weekends because it just would have been a grind and would not have been near as fun.
Would have been a slogfest, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a perfect way to put it. Like it would have just been so mundane and tedious and annoying to do that time after time after time. But yeah, it was incredible. So I mean, props to Ravensburger, props to the design team, props to everybody involved with that because it was a fantastic time to like launch all of this stuff into the stratosphere because it couldn't have gone better.
It really couldn't have. I mean, I think the overall consensus is that this is a really healthy spot that Lorcana is in with set 3.
Yeah, I've seen a ton of people that have a lot more experience with the TCGs than we do saying this is the best they've ever seen any game's meta be.
Yeah,
that's very, very, very high compliments.
I think it was even Zach Bivens that said that recently.
Yeah, I've seen 3 or 4 of like the big top dogs say that, and so that's massive kudos again to the team because it's very well deserving, and they're very much fostering a growing community because of it.
I mean, there's part of me that wants to just hold this set in a time bottle and just keep it. But
okay, that was actually going to be my next point, or one of my next points, and so we have to talk about that, is our feelings like leaving this behind going into another one. Leaving Chapter 2 going into Chapter 3, we were, in the middle of Chapter 2, it was kind of like, I don't really want anything. I'm just now getting all the cards I need. I'm just now like completing the sets and like really starting to get a grasp on it. But then once Chapter 3 came around, we were like ready. We were like, give me these new cards. Let's get locations. Let's get this new meta going. I think now everyone in our like inner circle, as we call it, are kind of torn because, one, the challenge in Atlanta. And so that's a weird dynamic where we're still in the set 3 mindset, but all the set 4 stuff's coming out. But also it's just so good. It's like going into the unknown, pun intended. Mm-hmm.
I like it.
And not, and worrying, I guess, that what we're going to be into is not going to be near as good.
I mean, there's no evidence that says it'll be worse or better at the moment.
No, I think there's the releases, which we'll talk about in a minute, show a strong, viability across a bunch of different inks. And so I think that the potential's there for sure. But it's bittersweet, right? I think that's the best way. Like yeah, for sure.
Because of course we want the game to continue to grow and add more cards, add more variety, more playability to different decks and stuff. But I don't know, set 3 seems like it'll be looked at as like one of the most perfect metas I think that Lorcana has probably had or will have.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely going to be hard to top. I guess the way that I look at it is like, give me another 2 months. To your point, I don't want it to get stale. Like I'm I have the foresight to understand that. Like, I would get tired of it in another month or two. But those two set championship weekends were so fun and perfect meta, and just I want to be able to recapture that one more time, I guess. I said going into my last one, I was like, win or lose, good or bad, it's going to be a sad time because it's over, and it was a blast. And that's still how I feel. Like, it was a blast. And, we're going to get more set championships. We're going to get the challenges. We're going to get all of the above. But it's sad to leave something so perfect behind.
I agree. I mean, I think if we're rating overall set 3, like, it's got to be 9 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10, 10 out of 10.
It really does. I honestly, I think I would put it that high too. I'm trying to think of ways where it could have been better. But I really, like, I'm at a loss of, like, how it could have been made better.
I mean, exactly. Yeah, I completely agree.
Okay, last Chapter 3 question. What's the most memorable, like, looking back, in 3 years, what are going to be the most memorable cards and the most memorable, like, dynamics of the game at this point?
I think first one that comes to mind is Medusa.
Yeah, I mean, that was going to be my first one too.
Oh, my bad.
No, I don't mean that. I don't mean that, but that's the perfect example then, right? Because that is, like, I mean, we talked about this, I think, for 45 minutes last night in our group chat, that, like, Medusa is the meta-defining card.
Yes. I mean, Ruby is the meta-defining ink, right?
Said that a few times, too. I'm trying to coin it. I don't know if I was the first person that said it or not, but I'm trying to coin it that the Ruby removal dictates the meta in a lot of ways. And so...
I quoted you. We'll say that. I quoted you. I didn't steal your line. I quoted
No,
you.
I didn't mean you did. I'm just saying I haven't heard anybody else say that. So if somebody else has said that, I'm not trying to steal it. I've just been the first person that I've heard say it. Is, Medusa has very much defined the meta in Chapter 3, just like Tremaine did in Chapter 1, just like Dragonfire, or in Chapter 2, just like Dragonfire did in Chapter 1. And so I think we've seen some glimpses of that in Chapter 4, which we'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, Medusa very much... dictated a lot of things in the way that the meta was played because of her ability and the, I guess, caveats of her ability with the 3 strength rule of it. So
I would say number 2 would have to be probably Robin Hood, Champion of Sherwood.
Robin Hood over Ursula? See, now we're different a little bit. I think Ursula...
Which Ursula?
Deceiver of All, of course.
Okay.
I think at the beginning of the set... Ursula was definitely the defining character. I mean, both of them even. I was so annoyed with Ursula Deceiver on turn 2. At the beginning of the set, I was so annoyed. I was like, how am I ever going to be able to deal with this? Like, how do you prepare for something that you know is coming and you just can't deal with it? Like, it does what it does, but you get more dynamic with your mulligans. You get better with understanding what's going to happen. You get better with dealing with the consequences of what's going to happen. And so it's still annoying, but Ursula Deceiver of All, if you can't take her out when she's played, with a song, I've seen a lot of people playing Smash more to be able to take her out instantly. Sure. Then she can wreak havoc. I'm pretty sure this is what happened in our set championship that we talked about when Michael beat me. Is turn 3 Ursula, I didn't have a song to take it out. Turn 4 Prince John, double sing Sudden Chill. Like, there's just, I mean,
what do you do?
It's coming. It's coming. But if you don't have the removal at that point to deal with it, then you're just, up a creek. And so it's, that to me is the second most impactful one. I mean, Robin Hood is up there too, for sure. But Ursula is just one of those that it very much takes your attention when she's played.
100%. I mean, so I guess we can, I'll give Champion Sherwood's case then. If you're...
Yeah, go for it.
I mean, I think a lot of the, I guess because I played Tempo for the longest time.
Yep.
So a lot of my tougher matchups were steel. So I guess when I think of
that's fair.
The hardest cards for me to deal with and the most defining for me would be probably Champion of Sherwood.
Well, I guess that makes a lot of sense in general because my hardest card to deal with was Ursula, I think. So,
I mean, he's so versatile, right? Like, because even once he's gone, your opponent draws a card for him dying, right? So, like, you're getting that he's challenging. He's gaining lore off the challenge, which you already need to do, and then he's drawing a card after he's done. And he's got great stats to boot, and good value. He can shift on turn 3. He's inkable. He's a 5 cost, so he can sing all the good stuff.
There's no downside.
There's no downside.
The 3 strength. We talked about Medusa. I guess the one downside
is... That's the one downside, but I think If it wasn't that, then he'd be like OP as all get out and be one of the first banned cards.
Yeah, if he had 4 strength, it would be really, really, really impossible because he would trade so much better too.
Yeah,
his ability to trade, I think, would be the biggest. I mean, dodging Medusa would obviously be one of the things, but just his ability to trade would be nuts.
100%. So I think if you're talking about the top 3, it would be Medusa, Ursula, Champion of Sherwood. I think would have to be.
I think you have to throw Lucky Diamond to that boat. I mean, it spawned. A lot of people consider Ruby Sapphire the best deck currently.
It created the birth of Sapphire in set 3 single-handedly.
Yeah, I think without Lucky Dime, Sapphire maybe not dies because you still have Hiram, you still have McDuck Manor, you still have passive lore from that, you still have a lot of card draw from Hiram and a lot of ramp, but it's definitely not what it is, and so that's why to me it is still a card that will 100% be remembered because it changed the way a lot of those decks can and would be played.
I mean, just from Lorcana's standpoint, like it was our first legendary non-character too. So
yeah, I mean that's a really good point too. Like not even from a competitive playability standpoint, just from like a development of the game standpoint. And still, the Chapter 4 was now released, like we said, and there was no non-legendary or there was no non-character legendary. Mm-hmm. I said I kept campaigning for a legendary song at the end, but we didn't get it, and so
we got something else instead that we'll get into.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point too. Like not even from a competitive perspective. I think that they will be remembered as for that alone.
I mean, it got DuckTales in the legendary space, so there you go.
Yeah. That was by far the biggest win from that property.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And then Treasure Planet. I mean, I think we have to talk about Treasure Planet and Atlantis.
I mean, yeah, that was huge for me. Like, those are probably 2 top 5 Disney movies for me. I guess I just grew up with those, watching them back to back to back.
Yeah, so, and it's crazy how fast some of this changes because, between Jim Hawkins and Morph at the beginning, it was like Treasure Planet is killing it.
Mm-hmm. Morph stayed around, I would say.
Not like he was in the beginning. Like everybody was playing Emerald Steel with the Shift Morph, with Shift Beast, Shift Tink, Shift Robin Hood. And I think he still played a little bit in some more mid-rangey ones. But not like he was. I mean, he was in every Emerald Steel deck. That's fair. Then everybody shifted to the Merfolk line instead of the Morph line.
That's fair.
So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely a very memorable set for a lot of ways. I hope that wraps it up. That leaves it in a lot of good light. I don't think there's that much else to say, but it was fantastic and a lot of fun.
I mean, I'll always have fun memories when I think of set 3, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, but yeah, with that said, we've got 15-20 minutes now to talk about set 4.
All right,
So, your initial thought, when I say Chapter 4, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
I mean, for me, it has to be like that this is not just from a gameplay standpoint, but from also a story standpoint, that this is like the culmination of the first 4 sets. Like this is like, not like it's like a new generation of Pokemon cards, like we're resetting, going into set 5. I don't think that's the case. I just think that this is basically the beginning. This is the end of the beginning of Lorcana.
It sure seems like it.
Right? So like, and again, not saying it's a new generation, like we'll have to restart all the cards again. That's not what I'm saying. But it just seems like the beginning of the game, this is the end of it. Like we're getting into like more...
We're at the end of book 1 of the series.
Sure, exactly.
Yeah, I'm usually not a guy that likes to get into the story. Like when I play games, I'm usually just all about like, completing the quests and completing the actions, and I'm not like incredibly invested in the story. When we were doing the story episode that, we did that story episode a while back that we just released. I had a ton of fun doing that, and ton of fun. And it has me hyped to figure out what's going on with Ursula.
I mean, yeah. I mean, there's little hints there. We even have a hint to what might be coming after set 4 in terms of story.
I don't know what you're talking about, but the coolest recent reveal for me is that there are 2 Ursulas. True.
So, I mean, we're gonna do a set 4 story episode once we play the Illumineers quest, I would assume, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, after we play it, we'll have a recap of that for sure.
So we'll do a follow-up basically to our story episode and get you guys up to date with everything that's going on in the story now. But like, so it's the Glimmer from the legendary Glimmer from set 3 Ursula.
Yeah.
And then it's the
Deceiver of All.
So that's the Deceiver of All, and then it's the set 4 Ursula legendary and Amethyst.
Yeah.
And that's the two of them, and I think the Amethyst one becomes the ruler of Lorcana card in
Sure
Illumineers
seems
Quest.
like it, since she's the one that's returning. That
Yes.
got let loose, and that's the one that everybody's scared of. So, and just based on the card, I mean, she seems very scary,
For sure,
to say the least. So, yeah, no, I think that's super exciting. I mean, there are definitely cards I'm super excited about. We've talked a ton about it with our group chat recently on what we're most excited about and what we think is going to be the best, and what we want to play and how the meta looks and all that sort of stuff. And it still looks really diverse. It still looks really good. Still looks really fun.
there might be even some new ink combinations coming down in the meta.
We'll see. Yeah, I mean, I think there's potential for it. So, what's the most like impactful card at the top of your mind when you think about the cards? It's got to be. I mean, the first thing that comes to your mind. What is it? Which one? Mulan. Yeah. I mean, I think me too.
I mean, I think when I thought about Mulan before, I was like, well, like, what if you can't get that shift on? It's still pretty dang good. Like, if you're doing splash to 3/2 damage.
Well, and there are a ton of tools now to buff,
add strength.
To buff strength. A lot of tools.
Even if you're just playing it, like, even if you're just adding 1 strength with Lumiere, right? That's a 9 damage splash that you're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's huge.
Yeah.
So, I think that, like, when we talk about, like, for me, like, Heroic Outlaw is the card of set 1. I would say, like, Stout-Hearted is the card of set 2. I think Mulan's probably got that, like, hero warrior.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, in that Robin Hood, I would say of set 3, and then
Sure.
yeah,
Exactly.
and then Mulan of set 4. Yeah, I said from the beginning she was my favorite, and I'm sticking to it, and not because it's probably the case that she's the best. I think that she will be the best. I think for like Mufasa decks, it's going to be insane. I think for Ruby Amethyst, it's going to be insane. I foresee a little bit of resurgence in Ruby Amethyst. Not that it was like ever gone, but I think it was pretty like very high skill. I would say you had to be very good on piloting it and very good into a lot of these matchups to get the advantages to pull off the wins. So it wasn't just like as dominant it was in the past, but I think she's going to be one of those, meta-defining removal cards because she can do so much damage to so many people so fast. Maybe Ward comes back more. Maybe there's more Ward stuff to avoid that.
Exactly.
That directed damage. But I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think she seems like incredible. The other one that comes to my mind is obviously Ursula. Not necessarily because it's like the big bad card, but because she stops people from singing. Which we've talked about. It's been a while since we've had like a conversation specifically on singing, but the mechanic of singing has probably become the most important mechanic in the game.
I mean, yeah, and she funny enough, Ursula is shutting off the glimmer she's fighting basically because the Deceiver of All, that's all it does.
Wants to sing a
double
lot.
sings, so it's shutting off. Like if you want to go from it through a story standpoint, if you want to look at it from there, it's cool too.
So to that point, I think just the impact and the way that it could potentially change the game is incredibly insane from that regard. Because
also she just exerts cards, which is super awesome. Like,
yeah,
I mean, a really cool card.
Vision Slab is another one that like is potentially one of those like very, I don't want to say meta defining cards, but very impactful and very big nuisance. And as a quick refresher, the Vision Slab is the one that keeps people from. I mean, the way that it's worded is moving damage counters, but that also means healing. And so there's the new Amethyst Bell that when played moves damage counters around. So that's a big one. So that you can take damage off of your characters and put them on your opponents. The Vision Slab would shut that down. Vision Slab would shut down like Rapunzel heal lines. And with all the self-damaged Ruby characters, That seems even more important than ever. So I'm more saying that as like a curiosity. Do I think it's going to be the most overpowered card ever? No. But it has the potential to be very disruptive because it is inkable. It's only 3 cost.
Gain passive lore.
It gains passive lore off of damaged characters as well. I didn't mention that when I was talking about it. And so there's a lot of potential behind it. And if you're, playing a deck where that doesn't have the value, then you ink it. And that's the importance of being inkable. So I think that one's just like a massive, like, watch out card for me because I'm very interested in playing Mufasa with the Mulan card we mentioned. I'm very interested in playing the Bell damage counter moving deck, in like potentially Ruby Amethyst.
Yes, yeah.
And again, so that counters both of them extremely well. And so it's like, who wins the battle? Is the Vision Slab so rampant that those decks can't work, or do those decks, get so big that people start running Vision Slab? I mean, there's a big to and fro there that, we'll have to see how it kind of pans out.
And it all has to do with the meta, right? It all has to do with what people want to play more.
That's why I think there will be a big like push and pull of it because
it'll change weekly.
If there's a ton of Ruby Amethyst, then people start running Vision Slab, and if people stop doing that, then people stop running Vision Slab, and then people go back up to the initial stuff. So yeah, again, with a healthy meta, I think that's going to happen a ton.
100%.
Okay, what comes in your mind next?
From a deck brewing standpoint, it has to be Phil.
Phil, yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
From the moment he was announced, it was like, oh, he makes all heroes half goats. Like, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So again, a quick recap of who Phil is and what he does is he's the steel character that gives heroes passive lore when played. I'm pulling up the exact wording on the card here real quick, but he's 4 cost inkable in steel.
2/3.
Am I correct on that one?
Yeah, 2/3 quest for 2, I believe.
So, yeah, I mean, he's just like a decent character, but then you throw in his ability where, again, when other hero characters are played, you gain 1 lore. That's pretty solid. So yeah, he's a 4 cost inkable 2/3. He's got 2 abilities. Your hero characters gain Challenger +1, so that's kind of nutty as is because that could potentially get a lot of people out of Medusa range. Your Robin Hoods are out of Medusa range.
Well, it's giving him Challenger +1.
Oh, Challenge, you're right. Sorry, I misread that. And then his second ability is whenever you play a hero character, gain 1 lore. So, if you're a Steel Song player, I feel like that's a very strong passive lore gain that you haven't really had unless you're playing flutes, which, depending on what camp you're in, maybe you're camp flutes, maybe you're not. That gives you a lot of options for the passive lore because basically every card in my current Steel Song deck is a hero. And so you don't even have to really change anything. You just have to figure out where you're going to fit them in.
I mean, here's my long dart that I'm throwing for set 4. I think Ruby Steel Hero will be a top 5 deck. That's my long shot.
Okay. We gotta remember that and come back to it. And see how that one pans out. Because I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying that's not gonna. I like that's a solid pick. I could see that working for sure.
Which I know people have wanted Ruby Steel to work out for a long time. So if Phil is the means to that, then I think people would be happy.
Yeah. It very well could. I think the LeFou character from Steel as well. That if you challenge. If you challenge and banish a character this turn, then you can play him for free. So, that's some Amethyst Steel synergies there. He sings a song, you banish somebody, or you bounce him and then banish somebody and then play him back for free, or, quest or whatever. So I think there's some synergies there. Okay, I've got one more on my list. Is there anything else that, like, comes to your mind when you think of, like, exciting stuff for set 4?
I think you're going to it. So the card that I'm thinking of.
What are you thinking of?
Lumiere.
No, that's actually not what I was gonna say.
Okay.
So Lumiere's the Ruby card, and he gives just straight up every other character gets +1, or your other characters gets +1 strength.
So there is a downside. So he's 2 cost inkable, which
2 strength, 2 willpower.
The 2 willpower, I would say, is the downside.
It's a little bit of a downside. He doesn't have ward either, and so he's not like a Prince John or like a Bucky that's just gonna sit on the board and.
If he was uninkable and ward, I'd take it.
But I still think he's great because You play him, like if he's on the board and you play a Robin Hood, maybe it's late game. Maybe it's turn 6, 7, or 8, and you're playing Robin Hood and Lumiere. He protects you against Medusa and Tremaine because 100%. He's now got 4 strength, so Medusa can't take him out and has to target Lumiere. Tremaine can't take him out or Robin Hood out because you've got 2 characters on the board. So yeah, I think people playing around with Lumiere and getting good at applying that ability at the right time is going to be key.
So you were explaining my Ruby Steel deck right there.
Yeah, I mean that's a very strong one. The one I'm kind of saying one that I thought you would say. So my last one is going to be Pegasus.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up.
So Pegasus is the 5-cost inkable shift from Emerald. He has a shift 3, 3 strength, 3 willpower, quests for 2, and his ability is when you play this character, if you use shift to play him, your characters, plural, so all of your characters gain evasive until the start of your next turn.
He's also evasive within himself.
Yeah, and he's evasive as well. So if he comes down, you've got your Merfolk, your Flynn, your whatever else that you played turn 1, 2, 3 or whatever, he comes down, everything's evasive. That's kind of like a Kita-ish ability where it like kind of stops the ability to remove things for a turn. The difference being obviously, or I guess not even the difference, the synergy being with Kita, people can't challenge, but they can obviously still like sing songs to remove things. So that's what they'd have to do here is they'd have to sing some songs to remove your cards that turn. And if they don't have those removal cards or actions or whatever it might be, then they're probably not going to be able to do so because they're evasive. And so that's even stronger. Whereas with the Kita, now there's so many damage or strength buffs that maybe some of that outweighs it. But
I would say the only downside to Pegasus is that if you're playing him, you have to play the 1 cost.
Yeah, because you have to shift him for that ability to be taken into to play.
If you're running Pegasus, you're running 8 cards already. That's already 8 cards that you're probably gonna want to run.
Yeah, which I don't think is a bad thing.
It's not bad. It's just you can look at it as a downside.
Yeah, potentially. Okay, and the last one I have to mention, which I've already talked about a little bit, and so I want to bring it up because of that, is the new Bell Accomplished Mystic, the Amethyst card that is a 5-cost shift for 3 that says when you play this character, move up to 3 damage counters from chosen character to chosen opposing character. I think we saw Ch4 Chapter 3 kind of spawn its own mini meta or mini deck with the whole new world and getting lore from exerting. We got the Lucky Dime stuff. Like the damage moving I think has a strong potential here because again we've got more self-damaged characters in Ruby. We have a Mulan character, we have a Beast character, and now we have the Mother Gothel from Chapter 2. So there's a lot of that. And then she can play and move the damage to your opponents to potentially take them out and heal your characters.
I mean, could there potentially be 2 types of Ruby Amethyst decks? Could there be a damage move and then a basic control?
Yeah, I think it could be like Amethyst Steel from this set, where you had kind of your normal mid-rangey, where you had the bounce package and a lot of damage songs from Steel to do a lot of the removal to get board control, and then you had the Ch4 wheel. I think you could very much have a damage mover deck and a normal just kind of mid-rangey control deck. So yeah, I mean, I think it's very possible.
I mean, if we're getting to the point now where we can have 2 viable decks per ink combination, that's going to be even more bonkers than set 3 ever was.
It makes it a lot harder to play into because you don't necessarily know what you're going up against. I mean, that's how I felt about Amethyst Steel the past couple weeks.
Sure.
I think your brother was the only one that was running the Ch4 wheel in set championships, but I played, I think 3. No, I didn't play your brother, so it was just 2. I played 2 people that had the Amethyst Steel decks, and both times it's like, let me see if there are any Ch4s here.
I mean, he could pop out at any second and turn the
game, and towards the end of the set, a lot of people started running that 2-cost Ch4, regardless of if they were running the big Ch4 or not, because of Minnie Mouse Surfer being such a resurgence and needing that 3 strength and evasion to take her out. And so the point I'm trying to make is like there could be a potential for a lot of breaks within ink types on like how it's being played, which makes it a lot harder to prepare against, or you have to be very...
Which I also believe is super healthy for the game.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a good thing. I just think as a player,
100%.
you have to really understand the meta and really understand the lines.
Especially going into these Lorcana challenges where we're going to have 2,000 people, per event. So
yeah,
people could be running whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
Right? So it's gonna be a lot of fun. I think.
It will be a ton of fun and will be crazy for sure. But I think that covers a lot. Well, okay, last thing, and then we'll shut it down on this. But the question for you to kick it off: Enchanteds. We have to talk about the Enchanteds.
I don't get the negativity, to be completely honest.
There actually is some controversy. I don't know if everybody's not super active online, then they might not have heard it all. But the backgrounds of the cards are all kind of, I don't know, like
blacked out.
Yeah, black is definitely the way to put it, but I like misty almost. Like they all have kind of like black backgrounds with like a lot of mist.
It's like an aura.
Yeah, or aura is a good way to put it. And so some people don't like that. It personally doesn't bother me. I understand why it might on some, because like the Cinderella Enchanted, for instance, from Chapter 2 is like way more vibrant and like way more classic Cinderella versus this one. I love them both though, and like I'm much more a fan of like the characters that there are Enchanteds of and the art of those characters versus like this overall stylistic choice. And so in general, I'm a massive fan of it.
I saw someone explain it to where the dark background is supposed to symbolize like Ursula taking over Lorcana, so it's a dark time.
Yeah, I've seen that too, and I've definitely like latched onto that, and I've definitely like spread that as well.
Which is super cool idea. Honestly, I can't wait to see this in person. This might be my favorite look of Enchanted so far.
It honestly might be mine too. Like the Chapter 1 Enchanteds are just so iconic to me because it's the start of the game, so it's hard to like top that. But these are definitely my favorite since then.
100%.
Like there were a couple cool ones in Chapter 2. Again, like the Cinderella Ballroom Sensation from Chapter 2 was insane. Aside from that, there were a couple that I liked. Chapter 3, honestly, it was, again, great cards, great art, just not necessarily my style. Chapter 4 has incredible characters that I love and incredible art. So give me your top 3 Enchanteds.
Okay, so number 1 is Super Goof.
Yep.
Number 2 would have to be Ariel.
Yep.
Sonic Warrior. Do we have all of them yet?
I think we're still missing a couple.
All right, well, 3 would have to be Yensid. I'd put Yensid
at number 3. I should have known that he would be up there. For me, see, I'm just a sucker for the classic like princess characters, 100%. And so Cinderella's up there, Jasmine's up there, Ariel's up there, Goofy's up there.
My favorite Disney princess, Goofy.
I know he's not a princess, but he's just a classic character. I know, I get it. But if I had to narrow it down to top 3, purely based on the card itself, Super Goof. Goofy's going to be in top 3. This is in no particular order because I honestly can't decide. Super Goof's definitely up there. And then, it's between Ariel, Cinderella, and Jasmine. Oh, and Anna.
Anna.
Oh, I'm going Goofy, Anna, and since it's her first one, Jasmine. Goofy, Anna.
But this is also Ariel's first Enchanted.
Yeah, but it's not like Jasmine's like classic Jasmine. You know, like like for the card, like playability of the cards and stuff. I like Stout Hearted. I like Sonic Warrior. I like the not necessarily classic cards, but for the Enchanteds, I want like classic Disney characters.
That's fair.
Jasmine, Goofy, Anna, and I always say that, and Anna's definitely not like classic Disney character because she's very much like going into battle with like a mystic sword. But I don't know what it is about that one. I think most people are like in love with the Anna one. I don't know if it's the consensus favorite at this point, but I know it's up there for sure.
If there's one that I dislike, it'd have to be the Anna for some reason. For me personally,
you don't like?
If I said I disliked one, it would be that one.
That's crazy. Because it's art, so everybody's got
exactly.
But yeah, Anna's. I think.
Not saying I'm not trashing it or anything. I'm just saying there's one that I don't particularly like. It would be that one.
I'm just shocked because that it does tend to be most people's towards the top. But yeah, I think those are. I think in general there's probably only 3 that I would be upset with like getting, and I don't even mean upset because obviously if you pull an Enchanted, you pull an Enchanted. Mm-hmm. But you obviously have chase cards. And I could reasonably say 6 or 7 of them would be chase cards, which is crazy to think.
I mean, I'd say like Piglet. like I don't want to pull Piglet.
Yeah, we didn't talk about Piglet. I don't really want to talk about Piglet. We can get into that in a different day because we're almost out of time. But yeah, rip Piglet.
I mean, I feel bad for all the Piglet fans because they're getting, kind of.
They got a good Piglet in Chapter 3. They can deal with it.
Yeah, that's fair.
I still haven't gotten like an OP Raya card, and we're 3 sets into Raya now.
And we got 8 Raya cards by this point.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, Sisu obviously is like taking.
I'm saying Raya herself.
No, I know. But that's what and that's what I meant when I initially said it. But Sisu is like taking the crown for the Riot franchise, it seems.
For sure.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of exciting things to come. We didn't even really touch on Sing Together or
We've touched on it in the past, so that's okay.
Yeah, no, and we'll obviously talk about it more once we get some chance to play around with it and actually start deck building and seeing how the meta starts to ship out. But yeah, new mechanics for Chapter 4, new enchanteds, obviously, a lot more cool cards coming up. Yeah, so super excited. Like I said, if you're still here listening, I touched on it at the beginning, but we are doing a YouTube stream and might even try to get up Twitch. We've never streamed on Twitch before, but might try to do both, of a playthrough of the Illumineers quest. So Illumineers quest, playing Illumineers quest. We're going to do all of our unboxings from day one that we get. So check out our YouTube stuff, because when this releases, we're going to have a ton of fun content coming up.
I like the Twitch idea. I like that.
I mean,
sky's the limit.
Why not expand it out the audience a little bit and see how things go? But anyways, yeah, so crazy times, super exciting moment in Lorcana history. I think this is going to be a big week for the game, for the set, and then this summer is going to be fantastic with all the challenges and all of the new set championship and everything coming. So super excited for what's in store. Super happy about this set and closing this chapter. And yeah,
couldn't agree more.
We move on from there. So. As always, everyone, thanks for listening. Thanks for sticking with us and supporting us. And we will catch you in Chapter 4.
All right, let's do it. Bye, guys.